Bob's here. Hi, Bob.
Oh, okay, we can start?
Yeah, you have a call.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Patton Township Planning Commission. Does anyone have anything to add to the posted agenda? And is there anything that we need to say about the attached policy regarding anything with the resolution?
No.
Okay, sounds good. All right, next we'll go on to the second agenda item, which is to approve the May 2nd minutes for the Planning Commission. Can I have someone make a motion to approve the May 2nd Planning Commission minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, no? Okay, so moved. Now we'll go to agenda item 3, which is public comments. Is there anyone on Zoom or in person that has any comments that are related to any items on the agenda? And if you have anything that you'd like to speak to with any item that is printed on the agenda, you can say those comments when we get to those items. Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to agenda item 4, which is the bicycle parking. Are you going to go clarify? Okay, fantastic. Oh.
So as many of you may remember, we started talking about bicycle parking regulations being added to the subdivision and land development ordinance starting in June of last year. And we had several meetings with different presentations, and we worked through a lot of different things. And in January of this year, you did vote to forward the recommendations onto the board. But given the scope of what we were talking about, we decided to do a little bit more community outreach before we went ahead and took it formally to the board to ask for a public hearing. So we have made a couple changes from the comments that we have received. So attached with the agenda tonight is a new version of the draft, and the overall changes that we are proposing to the draft that you last saw. We did add some language to clarify the split between short and long-term parking. We changed main entrance to public entrance. We also altered the distance for long-term parking from a public entrance, and then just a couple other little minor tweaks that we saw as we were going back through it. So that is attached with tonight's agenda, and all of those changes are in red, so they should be really easy to spot, and there aren't very many. And additionally, we found some language in the I-99 overlay district that would need to be altered if we're going to have our overall bicycle parking regulations in the Saldo. So that attachment has been included as well, so you could see what we're proposing to change there. And it's basically just removing some language. So one outstanding comment that we should discuss tonight is we received a comment about hotels, because right now the chart that we have in our draft does not specifically address hotels. It would fall under general commercial, which would be one bicycle parking space per 5,000 square feet with a split of 80% short-term to 20% long-term. So we are being asked to either exempt hotels from that commercial listing or consider a more similar calculation to what we would ask for with hospitals, which would be one bicycle parking space per 20,000 square feet with a 40-60 split, short-term and long-term. So when we received this comment, we went back and looked at the communities that we researched initially, which were those bicycle-friendly communities, and then some other other university communities with similar climates to ours. And I found that one of the most common ways of dealing with hotels was to ask for one bicycle parking space per 10 guest rooms with a split of either 50-50 short and long-term or 40-60 short and long-term. So staff does recommend the higher long-term parking because we do think that most of the bicycle parking used at a hotel would be for employees. So some of the possible recommendations that we're putting before you to consider is either to maintain what we currently have, which would keep hotels under general commercial, which would be the one bicycle parking space for 5,000 square feet, to add hotel lodging to the use chart, asking for one bicycle parking space per 10 guest rooms with a split of 40 short-term to 60 long-term, or to add hotel lodging as a use in the chart with one bicycle parking space per 20,000 square feet, which would be the same as what we're asking for hospitals. But again, to keep that 40% short-term and 60% long-term split. And we can also discuss any other alternatives that you would like to see, or if you have thoughts on how else we could do that or what else you might like to see. So we added an example in the agenda, the Patton Crossing Master Plan, which will have to follow any of these regulations if it's adopted, especially if the proposed amendment to the mixed-use overlay 2 district is also adopted. They are proposing a 100,350 square foot hotel with 140 rooms. So using that as our example, there are the 3 options that follow the recommendations. If we kept it as it is now, they would need 21 spaces. If we went with the 1 room or 1 bicycle parking space per 10 guest rooms, it would be 14. And if we went with the 20,000 square foot option, it would be 6 spaces. And then I have the breakdown there of what the short and long-term spaces would be. So with all this in mind, there's a list there for everyone of the there's 5 attachments, 4 of which would be the draft documents that would be forwarded to the board to show how things would be changed. And then we also included the email comment about the hotels. And then I just wanted to point out as well that the document to show how the regulations would change in the mixed-use overlay 2 district has not changed since you last viewed it in January 2022, but it is attached. And the same with the minor adjustments we agreed upon in January for the zoning bicycle definitions. So the main things we need to look at are how the draft ordinance has been updated in May, and make sure everybody's okay with removing language from the I-99 overlay, and then to consider the comment we got about how to handle bicycle parking at hotels. So with that, I can open it up to the Planning Commission for discussion.
Okay, sounds good.
I just have one. I have a question. I don't remember this at all, but why is the I-99 overlay, why is that necessary? And like, is it just an addition to?
Yeah, there's just language here. I can pull that up so you can see.
I read it. I just
It's
wasn't
just so
sure.
we don't have any conflicts. It's just simplifying it so that all the bicycle parking regulations will be in the saldo instead of some of it being in the saldo, but then it's in different zoning districts and which one supersedes the other one. So it's just streamlining it so that these are the bicycle parking regulations regardless of where it's defined.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that's the only reason for it.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Can you not, or you just aren't? Oh, you're telling me I'm not. Okay. Well, I was just showing it for her, but so everybody else knows what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, I would just be removing this language here out of the I-99.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw your hand up, Bill. Go ahead.
So I agree with staff to go ahead and remove the bicycle parking I-99 overlay district. It makes sense to me to have everything be in one place, one-stop shop. That way you don't have an attorney coming around later arguing that that whatever new building is not covered by it because this is over here and this is over here and because we're over here. So I agree with staff on just getting rid of that. So I agree with staff's recommendation. And then also, I'm hesitant to reduce bicycle parking at hotels, especially hotels that have, restaurants and things like that attached. It would be nice to encourage bicycle parking, and it'd be nice to encourage those people staying at the hotels to, if we're bike friendly and by any chance that they can also use bikes, because that would reduce traffic for us, but still have them around and using local business and local. So I'm I understand that, that hotels may want to be less than 21 spaces, but when you have people working there, and then you have people that may be coming and using it for their, you know, to either ride to various locations or do various different things here in the Patton region, I'm hesitant to recommend removing it. But if this board was to be arguing or accepting the argument to reduce, I would lean towards staff's recommendation, which I believe was if we were going to reduce, and staff, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the 14 spaces with the 6 and 8 long-term spaces. That's as low as I would be willing to go if we're going to be pushing this bicycle parking. And then my question to staff for a later date would be, why are we not pushing the hospitals to actually be in the same level? I mean, aren't there more physicians that want to ride their bikes too? I mean, isn't that something that is, that the administrations there are pushing to be more athletically fit, more, you know, health oriented, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just question why our hospital has a lower number. And I'm sure that was probably brought up, you know, multiple meetings ago, and I have just forgotten, and I need to be reminded. So thank you. That's my comments on this.
Yeah, just to address the hospital thing, I'm not entirely sure, I can't remember either if we specifically talked hospitals as in more detail, but just based on all the research we did on all the communities, it was probably the average of what we were seeing, plus we are a smaller community than some of the ones we looked at, but depending on how the rest of the conversation goes and what everyone else thinks of that, we could revisit that, but if everyone else is fine with how it stands, then we'd probably just keep it as it is now.
Okay, I'm going to withhold my comments to the end. Does anyone else on the Planning Commission have anything that they would like to say about the I-99 or the bicycle parking? Anyone on Zoom? Anyone in person?
I would just agree with everything Bill said, and I would be reluctant to actually reduce the number of parking spaces at all. I feel like they should remain as the rest of the commercial areas, the retail space.
Okay, thank you. Sharon?
I think that 14 spaces is plenty. I think that's going to probably not even be used to capacity, but it still provides enough for employees there. I don't think you're going to find a lot of travelers on their bicycles stopping at hotels. So I think it's mostly there for employees.
I'm okay with the 14. I wouldn't want to go below that. I mean, I think 14 is sufficient. The one question I had is the new outpatient building going to fall under this purview of whatever we decide?
No, because it's been
Because that's
approved.
not a hospital and that's been approved already,
Right.
so that
Right.
doesn't fall under this.
They are giving us some short-term bicycle parking with the new medical center going in at Top Trees West, but they aren't required because this hasn't been adopted yet.
Okay, very good.
Jim has his hand raised.
Oh, Jim,
Jim
I'm
got
sorry,
back.
go ahead.
Yeah, I got dropped somehow, so could you kind of recap the last few minutes there? Please?
Yeah, sure. So we just sort of discussed, Bill gave his comments in regards to his thoughts on the spacing, and then we just gave our thoughts. I think it's fair to say that we are sort of between the 21 and the 14 spaces in terms of what we would like to see. Anyone else can feel free to go in further detail to summarize anything for Jim.
Sure. Jim, I think the one other thing is I had said that I was okay with the I-99 change, that it makes sense to have everything be under one purview for this, so that way you don't have any developer or attorneys coming in later arguing that they're not covered by it. My count of a vote right now seems to be sort of evenly split between one for keeping 21 spaces, one for leaning towards keeping 21 spaces, but can be talked into 14 spaces, and then I believe 2 at 14 spaces. So you would actually be a deciding vote on this by my math.
And Mr. Prosick, if you want to weigh in.
And I think he got dropped again.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, he's,
It looks like it.
oh, Jim,
Yeah. Oh, boy.
So this is, so we need to take a vote to tell you where we stand. So I guess we ultimately need to wait
Well-
for Jim to get back in the mix.
I don't know if Bob, you have any
Yeah,
thoughts
Bob,
on
go
this?
ahead.
Or if we're kind of deadlocked and can't reach a consensus, staff can do more research and come back in August.
21 spaces is fine with me. I think that's actually more than enough.
I'm sorry, how many?
21,
Okay, so you're okay with, you want to leave it 21?
yes.
I would also just say that I agree with what you're saying about staff, but I also do believe visitors, as Bill said, to like restaurants, but also to guests. And people are being encouraged, if you look at the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau, to bring their bikes to the region, to, trailer them in, and having space for that, I think is a good idea. And meeting up with other people who bike. So anyway, I do agree with the 21 spaces.
Does anyone want to have any discussion about the split, about the 40% short-term to 60% long-term, or is everybody in agreement that that's the way to go?
Well, I guess I don't understand why we need too many long-term there, because the short-term, so if it's employees, they're coming and going each
Well, the long-term
day.
would be for the employees.
It's
That would be
3 hours, I think you said.
Yeah, short-term is, I believe, 3 hours. There's it's not necessarily going to be heavily monitored how long people are leaving their bikes there, but the idea is if you're going to be there for a long time, you're going to want your bike to be weather protected or in a more private location.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of where, when we were looking at this with different types of uses, we would think about employees in terms of the long term would be one of the.
Yeah, because they'd probably be working 8-hour shifts.
Right.
Okay, I get it.
I think I'd lean towards bumping up the long term on the 21 spaces.
Jim is coming back in. You got him. Anybody else want to?
Are we taking an official vote on this?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on board with the long and short term being 40 and 60.
Oh, there he is.
Okay.
Welcome back, Jim. Can you hear us?
You're
And your
muted, Jim.
microphone is
Oh,
on
there you
mute.
go.
I can hear you.
Okay.
If you want to leave your camera off, I don't know if it's an unstable internet connection, but if you turn your camera off, it might help.
I just live in Park Forest. As far as the parking, I'm kind of torn in between the middle of the 21 and 14, but I do think that if nothing else for employees, need bicycle parking at the motels, hotels.
Okay, so by my count, it seems like the consensus would
Deadlock.
be to leave it at 21.
I was 14, but am I in the minority?
I think so,
Okay.
because Bill was kind of leaning towards 21, Bob wants 21, Ellen wants 21, and Jim was leaning towards 21.
Okay.
So, does that sound right to everybody else? Did I get that right?
That sounds correct to me.
Okay.
Good to
And
me.
then we were talking, making sure that the 40% short-term, 60% long-term was, that there was a consensus on that as well. But I think pretty much everybody who spoke said they were good with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would ask staff to just review if they would be willing to go up to a minimum of 8 long terms on option 1, and I leave that to staff.
Where am I here? Yeah, I think that would be, what would that be? Did I recalculate that?
But I'm also willing to sort of move on so that we're not, tying up all of this for that.
Okay.
Okay. Are we good, Nicole, with everything that you need to go forward to the,
Yep, so we will,
Okay.
we will add, we'll probably add, because we're changing the split, because right now if it's just under general retail as it's written, it would be 80% short-term, 20% long-term. So we will probably add hotel lodging at 1 per 5,000 square feet with 40% short-term and 60% long-term. So that's, and then you'll need to make a motion, somebody to forward all of these documents to the board, essentially set a public hearing, and just please include in the motion that we're going to add the hotel lodging as well.
okay, sounds good. So can I have someone make a motion, and then we'll ask for a second?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, do I have a second to forward our comments on? Bill, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed, no. Okay, thank you. And now we're going to go on to number 5, which is status on pending items. Is there anything here that we need to go into detail on? Everyone has a copy of things.
I will just make the one note under B, pending work commission tasks. Number 2, accessory dwelling units have been put on hold. And I'll also take this opportunity to let you all know that I have resigned from this position, and my last day will be at the end of next week. So while staff kind of regroups and figures out where to go from here, the ADU conversation and affordable housing will be on hold. So just let you all know.
Okay, well, thank you for everything you've done, and
Oh, thanks.
I wish you best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yes, same here.
Same here.
Okay, this wasn't on pending items, but are they starting anything on that outpatient building out at Toft Trees, or?
We're just waiting right now to get signatures.
Oh,
And
okay.
then they're gonna get started out there.
Yeah, I saw a slew of trucks out there when I was going to get help on my golf game, so, okay, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Actually, I did have a question about that, too.
Go ahead.
I looked at the update items and wondered about the medical office facility, and also there were some open items in that, and I just wondered if those had been resolved, like the beneficial reuse line or some of those other things. Or do we know if any of that has?
I see Doug has come to life here, but I'll let him take that if he wants to.
Ellen, I'll answer. The beneficial reuse, turns out UAJ wasn't ready to extend the lines at this point, so that's been left for a future date to see if we can make that happen. What other questions did you have?
Well, I guess one other one would be the update on the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail connection and what that timeline is, what steps and timeline for that. That was in there, but I mean, it wasn't exactly.
Yeah, well, at this point, the timeline is when the building's ready to open, so, which is probably like a year and a half from now.
Okay.
Okay, now we're on to agenda item 6. There's a report from the Patton Township Housing Task Force. Is there anything that we need to focus our attention on, or is there anyone on the Planning Commission that would like to say anything about that group at all?
I'll just give a quick update that the group did meet in May, and they're continuing to do research on comparable college communities and their affordable housing situation and what they might be doing that's working to help. And the group was talking about doing more PSAs through CNET, but now given the news of my departure, we're gonna have a meeting on Wednesday of this week to kind of see what could be next for that group and how they can move forward and what's gonna happen with that, so. you know, it's a little up in the air at the moment, but we'll get some answers and, you know,
Okay.
see what we can do.
I just had a question, but this might be more for my senator and state rep in regards to, is there anything in the state budget that would assist with any of this at all? It was just past Friday, so I haven't looked through it with a fine tooth comb yet, but I was just curious going forward if that would impact anything. I don't know.
At this point, I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, so that puts us to 6B, which is Center County Solutions-Based Housing. Is there anything that we need to talk about in regards to anything along those lines?
Not really, this is just an update on how that's progressing in the stakeholder sessions that took place in the spring. And I do believe that this study is on track to be completed, I think in November. So that's moving forward, and hopefully a draft will be ready for review by the end of the summer and recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Any other business that we need to discuss or be privy to? Okay. So I will make a motion to end the planning commission meeting, and then we will start our work session. Can I have a motion to adjourn our planning commission meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn the planning commission meeting.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no? Okay. So we're okay to transition to the work session now with CNET? Okay, fantastic. All right, so the first thing on the work session agenda is potential amendments to the planned airport district. I will let people, and I think there's maybe someone here as well, to go into depth on that. Thank you.
Sure. So I think some of you were with us when we last talked about potential amendments to the planned airport district. Conversations were ongoing in 2019 prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was requested that we put out a request for proposals to consultants to come in and help work with us on a zoning rewrite for this area. And due to the onset of the pandemic, that didn't really come to fruition. So staff began having discussions a little bit more recently and with some members of the community who have expressed some interest in seeing something happen with this area. So what we have prepared for you tonight, we have kind of come up with 3 different options that we'll get into in just a moment. And there are 3 of us who worked on this, so we'll each take one and kind of walk you through it in a really brief manner. And I wanted to point out that between all 3 of these map options that you will see, there are lands in this area owned by Penn State, so all of them do propose rezoning those lands to the University Plan District, which is an existing zoning district for us. And all 3 of them leave, there is an approach and a runway area kind of south of Fox Hill Road, and so they all leave that as it currently stands. And I also wanted to note that due to the proximity of this area to the University Park Airport, all development will require review by PennDOT's Bureau of Aviation to ensure that all FAA requirements are met. So that those will be items no matter which option, if we go with one of these options, comes in force. So any zoning rewrite that we come up with, I'll just say it that way, will have to abide by the FAA requirements. So option 1, Alex, do you want to share a
Can
screen?
I
or do
just
you want me
ask,
to-
I'm really sorry.
No, it's fine.
I wasn't part of, I wasn't on the planning commission, and just wondering, why is this necessary? What was the
catalyst?
Here, I can
for it?
share my screen.
catalyst? That's a good word.
So, okay. Can you see, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, so the pink lines that you see are the current changes in use, the current boundaries between different uses in the PAD. So for example, this property here, owned by Ann Gale, it has 3 different separate uses just on that one property. So these boundaries don't stay with the property lines, which is one issue.
I couldn't see anything that word.
So are you saying that essentially that it's already being reused? And so we're just, it's almost like an after the fact thing? Or
Well, I think part of the bigger issue was that spot zoning was happening out here because
I
of.
got it, okay.
Because of this, and
Got
Doug can speak if I'm speaking incorrectly, but I think a lot of spot zoning was happening out here because what's in place wasn't working.
Okay, got it.
Just for your reference, and I'm sorry, we probably should have included this. This is what the PAD currently looks like. So the first little strip Alex talked about with the pink line is zoned as non-residential, but if you see it kind of cuts through
Yes.
properties, because these are the parcel lines. Then there's this area of mixed use and then residential area. And then down here, we're all proposing to leave these alone, but then this is also a separate thing. So we're trying to look at different things that can happen here that make this a little more cohesive and maybe a little more streamlined, and that would maybe promote development and allow some of these property owners to do some different things, because it's just kind of.
So if they wanted to do something different now, they'd have to come to the zoning.
If it's not already permitted where they
Got
are,
it.
so.
Okay.
This was just kind of our way that this is kind of a big area
Right,
that we've had some interested parties wanting to do different things with
I
that,
see.
so.
Okay, thank you.
If that helps them.
It does.
Yeah.
Helps a lot.
Yeah, one of the interested parties we spoke to is this property here owned by Mr. Bigetel. He's currently zoned A1, I believe, and wanted to enter the PAD, but wanted to see a higher density of housing permitted there. So we had spoken to him multiple times over the last few years about that. And so my proposal, excluding the areas that Nicole spoke about already, was why not just allow medium-density housing throughout all of these orange properties and leave the properties like Nittany Valley Sports Center and other commercial properties, leave them commercial. And there's also this University Park Plaza Corporation that's already commercial, leave that commercial, but everything else, medium-density housing. When that happens, I made a little spreadsheet. I summed up all of those areas that are in orange, and it's approximately 366 acres. Applying different numbers to it, if it was 8 units per acre, we'd have 2,927 units. And the whole way up to 13 units per acre would be 4,756 units. So you can see there's a big potential for a lot of housing to go out in this area. So does anyone have any questions about the map provided for me?
And no exceptions would be made for, like, butting up against the state game lands? That would still be all available for mixed use? Or dense, whatever you just called it, high
The
density?
medium density, R3. Yeah, I mean, that's all stuff that we can talk about. You know, we can add buffer requirements and different things to our ordinance.
Just to clarify real quick, because I probably should have went through the rest of this before we started going over the maps, just so everybody has an idea of what exactly we're looking for, so it's not so much to
Okay.
try to take in
Yeah.
at once. So
Thank you.
I apologize for not giving you more information up front. But, so the purpose of this meeting tonight is to kind of bring this back around, let you know as the Planning Commission that we as staff has started to discuss this item again, that we have been receiving interest from some residents again in this. So we are kind of using these 3 maps, options 1, 2, and 3, as a jumping off point. And then what we want to do after, this is just kind of a reintroduction, if you will, for you guys tonight, is begin stakeholder and resident outreach. That would essentially be 3 different phases, that we would talk with the property owners and the airport. So the property owners within the PAD now and the airport, we would talk to them first. Then we would invite the adjacent property owners that surround the area to talk. And then we would do a random sample survey of the township at large to get some input from the residents. We would then bring all that information back to you so that we could further discuss each of the 3 options and the input we received and kind of narrow from either 3 to 2, or if there's one kind of clear option that stands out above the rest that maybe just needs some tweaks. And then we would start to work through what that could look like and what do we need to consider when it comes to surrounding properties or uses or any other sort of regulations that we would need to be mindful of. So just to take a little pressure off of tonight's conversation, this is more just a reintroduction to you and what we have been discussing and what we've been hearing from the community, and to basically let you know that we're gonna start talking about this again, and then this is the process we're gonna follow. So it's more, do you have any specific thoughts on the options, and do you have any specific thoughts on that initial process of getting that stakeholder and resident feedback?
I have two thoughts, but I'm gonna let everyone else have an opportunity.
Well, here's my other question. Do we want to hear the other two options before we start, or do we want to take a break now and address some more questions and comments?
I have a question. So because this whole university with where the runways and everything is, this is the private airport as well as the university airport?
The private airport?
Isn't there a private like or for small planes?
There's
Nothing out there?
Oh, Doug?
There's a general aviation part of the University Park Airport, and then there's also there's a small airport over by Bellefonte. I don't know if you're referring to one of the.
No, I was just wondering if there were any runways that smaller planes like that individuals owned were.
No, University Park Airport has just the one runway.
Okay.
So do we go through the other two maps really quickly? Or
Yeah, I mean, I
are
think
you
that
sure?
would make sense, so then we could ask questions about those options as well, and, then we can move ahead with the next steps.
Okay. Alex, did you have anything else to add, or should we move on to option 2?
I don't think I had anything else to add right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Nicole, are you ready to discuss option 2?
Yep,
Okay, let me get your map up.
thank you.
All right.
So in option 2, I'm proposing a lot of residential between uses of R1, R2, and R3. The red, the orange, I should say, is the R3 section. The green, with the exception of Burnell Road or Burnell Park, would be R1 density. And the yellow would be R2 density, similar to that of Park Forest. The red section is the general commercial, as most of that is already commercial with Fox Hill Center and University Park Plaza, as well as the items that are the parcels that have already been developed under the Nittany Valley Sports Center. The section there in orange in between is Arrow Point, which is also part of the Nittany Valley Sports Center complex. And then the section in front of that is commercial. And presently, with the most recent master plan for Nittany Valley Sports Center, that is already being proposed for commercial.
Okay. And then option 3, which for some reason I don't have up. So give me 1 second. All right. Try that again. Do you have it up by any chance? Option 3 is very simple, so I can get it to open, that would be great. So I guess no.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
No, I know, but you didn't, I feel bad because I thought maybe if you had it ready.
No, I didn't.
Thank you, Alex. So with this proposal, again, the two areas that are consistent with the other two options are the same. And then essentially what this one is proposing is just allowing mixed use throughout. So opens up potential for this to be mixed use and all the other properties. And it would be optional because we don't necessarily want to add a bunch of commercial space out here that require it if it's not going to be utilized. So it opens up some different options for the property owners and developers to do different things with it if they so choose. And again, when the regulations start to get framed out, things like, depending on the adjacent properties, we could look at different setbacks and buffers to kind of shield the more rural residential and the game lands, so that if it does get developed as commercial, there would be more of a buffer in between, whereas if it was developed as residential, maybe we wouldn't need as much of a buffer there. So those are the kinds of things that would be looked at more closely if this option starts to get some traction and some interest, is how do we balance where the commercial goes and what it's near to help keep everything cohesive. So that's really it for the three options that we would like to take to stakeholders and the general public to get some feedback to see how people are feeling about it. And then, as I mentioned, once we kind of do the three phases of that community and stakeholder outreach, can bring that feedback back around to you all and discuss it with you, and then see if that we can get narrowed down and then really start to dig into what those options could look like and what regulations would make sense.
Okay, does anyone on the planning commission have any questions or comments?
Somebody from the public does.
Oh, I'm sorry, public. Yes, go ahead, and please state your name so we can put it in the minutes. Thank you.
Elaine, you'll need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
And I think that's some of our,
There we go.
Yep, we're all
Okay.
set now.
Sorry it took so long. It actually is Elaine's husband. I'm also in a Board of Trustee meeting in the other room, so forgive me. Simple question on
Sir,
all
if you
these.
identify yourself, please.
Oh,
for the
forgive me.
record.
Forgive me. Ted Brown, Edward Brown on your map. Edward and Elaine Brown. It's in the middle of all the three options, right across from Burnell Road. My question is very simple. What is the source of water for any of the options, well or public?
It's public water for the most part, except for, I'm going to say, some of the homes that are out beyond yours. They may be on well, but the rest of it would all be public water and public
All the
sewer.
options, I'm asking not about what exists, but all the three proposals, would that all be public water?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm worried about what's happening in our neighbor township.
Yeah, that was my question I had written down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Thank you for your comments, Mr. Brown. Anyone from the planning commission that would like to say any statements?
A question about the road, Fox Hill Road. Are plans being made to expand that if we would do anything where we'd be encouraging more traffic? Because right now it's so scary for bike riders, and I just watch people on that road, and it's getting pretty bad just as it is.
So we would have traffic studies completed at the time of land development, and we would we would have the developers team look at turn lanes and different movements and determine what mitigation would be necessary. So that would have to be done at that time. Right, Doug?
Yeah, I think in terms of automobile traffic, Alex is right. Fox Hill Road's a PennDOT road, so we'd have to coordinate with them. You recently saw the reconfiguration of the intersection there at Fox Hill and Burnell. Project came about because of the sports center out there. In terms of bicycle, we have been working with Penn State University, who owns the former game lands there, and have at least a verbal agreement from them that they would work with us to provide right-of-way for a bicycle path, a shared use, what we call the shared use path, that would go from basically, would come out of the PAD and then get bicyclists down into Toft Trees or connect them to Fox Hollow Road, which has bike lanes on it. That would also provide access for pedestrians from the PAD area into Toft Trees, which has pedestrian facilities in.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make any comments? Public, Planning Commission? So I just had something that kind of is similar to what the public comment was. My concern is where things stand right now, even though the current PFAS situation is more Benner Township, kind of similar to what the public comment was. I just, I was thinking before we move to develop things, I would feel, from my standpoint, more comfortable if we sort of knew that when we were going to move to development, if some places had to go on wells versus public water, if any of that situation would impact anything in our township, even though right now it seems like it's more focused in Benner Township. So that was the only statement I wanted to make. And then on the bottom, it says that, PennDOT would have to review it. And I guess the question I'm asking is, would the DEP need to take a look at things just to ensure that what is a problem currently in Benner doesn't somehow impact what we're trying to do out there in terms of development? So that was the only thought that I had.
Well, DEP would get involved if, depending on the parcel size for an MPDES permit, so they would be looking at.
That's not gonna.
It's not gonna impact that issue, but.
Yeah, I think that anything over and above, anything more dense than homes on 1 acre, which is the rural residential that I think Nicole had included on a part of hers, option 2. Anything more dense than that's gonna have to be on public water. So anything that's a 1/4 acre lot or any multifamily housing or any commercial development, all that will be required to have public water. There's public water available out there, so that's not an issue either. That's the most effective thing we can do to address that PFAS issue that's going on out there. Does that answer your question, Rich?
Yeah, so that would kind of be contingent with homes being built there, as they would be on public water, so they would have to develop that going forward before that would come to the final stages. Is that correct, pretty much?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the backbone of the water infrastructure is already in place, so, and the developers would be responsible for any new water infrastructure that's required out there. So it's a matter of all the new pipes that would be required, developers would pay for that. So that would all occur as part of the land development process.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything else. I don't know if anyone has anything else in the Planning Commission. Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. So are there any wetlands out here in any of this property that needs to be protected?
That's a good question.
They're already protected by federal and state law.
Okay.
So there's nothing more we need to do at our level.
Okay. And then what about if you go with the more dense stuff, development, what about wastewater? How does that, do we have enough?
This would all be on public sewer also,
And we have enough capacity?
yes.
Okay.
So I guess in terms of we just need to provide you our thoughts if we're comfortable with the process of how to survey the public, which I personally am fine with. You know, I think just to do the best that we can to get it in, you know, several different modes so people can't miss it unless they're in a cave, to know when they're in that group that we're trying to get their, you know, genuine input on things. So I'm comfortable with the process of how we're going to engage the public. I don't know if anyone else on the Planning Commission has any thoughts on that before we move forward.
And how will we be doing that? Engaging the public? We'll be having like meetings that they're invited to?
Yes. Probably we'll have like open house meetings to have the public come in. That's how I envision it happening.
Okay.
Yeah, and they'll be notified, so if they can't make any meetings that are scheduled, they will be able to email or call or provide input any way they can, when they can.
Okay.
In the version that you described, option 1, you were pretty specific about what the ultimate outcome could be, you know, in terms of number of housing units. Would the other options be able to do that too, to be more sort of descriptive of how the ultimate, you know, what the ultimate outcome could be?
Yeah, Nicole, you have your numbers, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So for the R1, which is the green, which would be from Mr. and Mrs. Brown toward toward Buffalo Run, and then the property, the 24 acres next to Burnell Road Park. Those would be minimum 1 acre size lot with potential to get up to possibly 24 single-family dwellings in there.
So these properties,
For the 24 acre parcel.
this parcel.
For the R2, which is the yellow, which is south of Burnell Road Park. For half acre, just a rough guess, for half acre size lots, it's roughly 216. And then obviously, if you go to a quarter, it would be more than that, double that. And then for the R3 section behind, right there, that parcel with 127.83 acres can roughly give you about 412 townhouses at 13,500 square feet per lot. And then the smaller portion down there at the Bigatels, I'm thinking quite similar to the SNA parcel that's between the Nittany Valley Sports Center, which could give you possibly up to 12 units or 24 duplexes.
Yeah, and I didn't do any residential calculations for the mixed use because it would be so variable, but we could maybe put together a rough idea of like a average number.
We're just trying to get an idea of density. And is there any discussion of affordable housing units? I mean, or is that, have you guys?
Yeah, I think that's on our radar to maybe try to include something in any potential regulation rewrite to get some affordable housing in there.
Okay, is everyone on a good point on this topic in terms of having direction of how we want to proceed? Anyone else on the Planning Commission or the general public have any other input or questions? I just want to make sure that we're at a good stopping point with things. So I guess the next step would be to get the stakeholder
Correct.
input.
Yes.
Okay.
As long as everyone on the planning commission is good with how we're moving forward.
Yeah, and those three options we're going to obviously present to the stakeholders when each group's coming in, and obviously they can give their feedback and have an opportunity to maybe give other ideas as well.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I'm comfortable with that. Anyone else have any other thoughts or questions?
The only other thing I'll mention, I mean, I obviously won't be here, but it probably will take a few months to do all that, so you might, I mean, I imagine maybe you'll get an update, or if you ask at the next meeting or the next couple meetings, but odds are there isn't gonna be a whole lot of new information in August or September as staff works to do this. So just to let you know, it's still gonna be time and process, but as soon as they're ready to bring something back to you. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
and we can certainly invite the planning commission to attend these meetings, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that, no, we can't? Okay.
It's better that you keep it to those groups you identified,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Okay, is there anything else before we move to close our work session?